World War I is mostly a European war, in a sense. But of course, there were battles and campaigns occurring in the Pacific, Africa, and in the Middle East. Thankfully, conflict never arose in the Americas, until it did. Mexico was neutral in World War I, as it didn't have the military or country to even fight due to the Mexican Revolution ongoing at that time. On January 17, 1917, the German Empire sent Mexico a telegram saying,
"Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, join it or something."
This was the closest Mexico ever got into entering World War I, and because of how unrealistic a government without a country declaring war on a superpower, this is the scenario I came up with. Way before this Zimmerman telegram went to Mexico, Mexico was ruled by Porfirio Diaz, who was pretty much a dictator since he couped the government in 1876. His rule was characterized by jailing political opponents, rigged elections, and allowing the elite of Mexico to control all aspects of agriculture and industry, while also allowing American companies to exploit the land. Although this was unfair to the Mexican people, his strong authoritarian government brought stability to the country and made relationships with formerly hostile United States friendly. This culminated with Diaz and U.S. President Taft meeting in Texas to settle a border dispute regarding the Rio Grande River. Interestingly, as I researched this, it seemed to be a very secure area, with 4,000 Texas Rangers, U.S. troops, Mexican troops, and a small number of FBI agents to protect the two leaders. Despite all this protection, one managed to slip past the guards into this meeting, and in this timeline, he successfully takes his shot. In 1909, Porfirio Diaz was shot dead. The after effects of the assassination would not be felt till years later, but for now it seems that freedom will return. The new president of Mexico would be former Vice President Ramon Corral, who would begin to transition Mexico into a republic. By 1911, Corral would have historically been diagnosed with cancer and have died in 1912. This is where elections would shortly take place. For more context of this alternate 1912 election, the two most dominant political parties that would run are the Mexican Liberal Party and the Progressive Constitutionalist Party, and others such as the Zaptistas and the National Republican Party of Mexico. For a brief overview of all these political parties, the Mexican Liberal Party, for starters, was not liberal in the modern sense, and followed an ideology called Magonism. And to make it simple and to not make this confusing, the ideology is the viewpoint of mostly the revolutionary Ricardo Flores Magon and his comrades who wrote the newspaper Regeneracion. Thankfully, the newspaper had an English section where, to simplify things, the Liberal Party wanted constitutional reforms limiting the executive branch's power and the role of the vice president, expansion of education, return of Quintana Roo to the Yucatan, that's a state in Mexico, prohibition of Chinese immigration, the reform to the proletariat, land reforms resulting in haciendas, those being large land-owning estates, being evenly distributed to the indigenous peoples, and municipalities to be reorganized. The Progressive Constitutional Party was a splinter group of the former Liberal Party, not the Mexican Liberal Party, which we just covered, but of a way older party, which is around the time of Mexico's independence. The party was led by Francisco Madero, who had an ideology called Maderoism, which essentially just maintaining democracy and limiting the power of the president, but essentially classical liberalism in a sense. The Zaptistas were a group of anarchists who rallied behind Emiliano Zapata, for which they are named after. Although the ideas of Zapatismo, the political ideology of the party, were not yet fully created in our timeline until the middle of the revolution, it's likely that the key viewpoints such as land redistribution, agrarian communism, and confederationalism, and other hands-free government policies will still be created for the party's viewpoints. The National Republican Party is the most fictitious party I created for this scenario, and I only made it to give representation to the Porfirias, the landowners, and the Felicians. Generally, they would be pro-American and follow the leadership of Diaz's nephew and Victoriano Huerta. Foreign powers such as the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, who had invested almost millions into Mexico, would have been displeased, to say the least, with the knowledge that the potential of losing all this money, and with reforms occurring that could impact foreign companies, the United States would likely interfere through supporting opposition leaders, arms embargoes, and further influencing areas of high American interests. Skipping over a few years to the fictitious election of 1912, the coalition of the Liberal Party, the PCP, would win the election. Reforms would take place almost immediately, which would be beneficial to the common people and generally improve the living conditions of workers, as stated with the points of the Liberal Party, while the PCP would balance the diplomacy of the American companies and the remaining haciendas. By now, relations with America and Mexico have shifted far from peaceful coexistence and are now essentially negotiations to rent an excuse for an American invasion, for which there are many. Mexico is forced into a corner and begrudgingly allied itself with the German Empire as a replacement for the loss of America as a trading partner. With America losing its influence over Mexico and seemingly German influence expanding into the Caribbean, America would attempt to reinforce the Monroe Doctrine, which would be unsuccessful. World War I would then start in Europe, and Germany would begin to use unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking American ships. Along with this, raids across the Mexican-American border, either by filibusters or bandits, would encourage the deployment of Texas Rangers on the border. In response, Mexico would send federal army. By around July of 1915, Texas Rangers would discover the Plan of San Diego. In our timeline, the Plan of San Diego was a planned insurrection and mass unalivings of non-Hispanic people residing in the border states. The possible goal of this rebellion was either to annex the formerly lost lands of the Mexican Empire or to be a false flag attack to allow America to join the war on the side of the Carranza faction within the Mexican Revolution. With the discovery of this plan and the already ongoing rebellion, Congress would declare war on Mexico and send the National Guards of Arizona and Texas to fight Mexico, as the U.S. military would be sent to Europe for World War I. This is where I'll split the timeline again, as there is a realistic outcome and an unrealistic outcome, that being an American victory and a Mexican victory in the Second American-Mexican War. If we look back on how the American Expeditionary Force fought against Pancho Villa in our timeline, we can see that they were mostly unsuccessful, but with the more manpower and the usage of amphibious invasions to important ports such as Veracruz, the United States would quickly secure the coastal eastern Mexico to gather its rich oil fields. There would be tough resistance against American forces, but they would quickly march towards Mexico City and Chihuahua. By 1916, American troops would have captured Mexico City, and Mexico would then collapse into complete anarchy, with the Mongones taking the state of Sonora and Baja California, and the Zapatistas taking over Chiapas, much like in our modern-day Mexico. And various other factions would sprout throughout Mexico, but the key details were that the Americans would occupy the north and east of Mexico and reinstate Felix Diaz as president of Mexico. Now, the unrealistic scenario is a Mexican victory, where the Plan of San Diego occurs successfully, and major cities such as El Paso, San Antonio, and Houston become hellscapes. Mexico invades the south and captures Dallas, forcing the United States to negotiate. Also at this time, Mexico oil imports to the United Kingdom would stop, and as the United Kingdom relied 80% on their imports for their navy, it could be theorized that Great Britain's navy would fall in World War I, allowing Germany to get its imports and eventually a victory in the Western Front. And this is where I'll end this video. Thank you for watching the entire video, and make sure to like and subscribe to, I don't know, make sure what the next video is, I guess. But you can also vote in polls to decide what the next video is, because I often post those. But I think I already said thank you again, but if not, thank you for watching, and